And welcome to this Family and Children's Services Scrutiny Committee on Thursday the 6th of March 2025. You have an agenda pack with you. On that agenda pack, the first item is apologies for absence. So do we have any apologies today?
Yes, Chair, I've got apologies from Councillors Hill and from James Lewis.
Thank you for that. In your agenda pack, the minutes of the previous meeting are on pages 11 to 18. Does anyone have any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? I'm not seeing any comments, so with your permission, I will sign those off as an accurate summary of that meeting held in January. Standing item on this scrutiny committee is disclosure of members' interests. We all have our published declarations of interest. Is there anything on the agenda paper today which you think you need to declare either a personal or a prejudicial interest? And again, I'm not seeing anything from anyone on that one. So we come to the substantive part of the meeting. And the first report which you have in front of you today is contained on pages 19 to 56, and that is the Virtual Head Teacher Annual Report, which I always look forward to getting to. Jane, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to everyone and then take us through the summary of the report.
Thank you, Councillor. Hello, I'm Jane Walker and I'm Northumberland's Virtual School Head Teacher. I'm very pleased to be able to present to you this morning my annual report for the previous academic year, which is 2023 to 24. From a corporate parenting point of view, virtual school head teachers became statutory for all local authorities in 2011. And the reason for that was because the achievement of cared for children at school was way below that of their peers. These children had suffered considerable trauma in their lives. They have gaps in their education for one reason or another, and their needs weren't being met as well as they should have been in mainstream school, and that obviously affected how well they did at school and then what kind of education, training and employment they could go into after that. So virtual school head teachers are very strong corporate parents, and from our point of view that means we want the same for our cared for children at school as we would want for our own children. So the same quality of education, the same diversity in their education and the same opportunities at 16 when they leave school. I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about corporate parenting, Vicky?
Yes, thank you, Jane. I would just like to remind everybody here today in terms of your roles as corporate parents, and that actually tomorrow we do have our policy conference, which everybody should have been emailed about. So that's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and it's in the new conference rooms 1 and 2. So I hope as many of you as possible can come along and hear a little bit more about corporate parenting, our plans for taking everybody's roles forward as a corporate parent, and what we want to do over the course of the next year as well. Thanks,
Vicky. So this year's report then is a little bit different to previous years. It has more content around lived experience in there, and I've had head teachers and schools contributing more to the report, because after all, that is where the teaching and learning takes. Have I gone off? No, it is actually where most of the virtual school staff deliver their services to our children. So at 321 school-age care for children, that was the highest number that we have ever had. 81% of them attended good or outstanding schools, and that is the highest proportion ever, which is absolutely fabulous and makes our job much easier if we know that they're in good and outstanding schools. So in terms of the education achievement headlines, more children are now working in their age-related curriculum. And that's a real kind of COVID recovery priority for us, that actually a lot of our children after those couple of years of COVID, if they were, for example, of year 7 age, they weren't necessarily following that curriculum at school. Some of them had dropped to as much as 2 years behind. So a child who was year 7 age might have just been following a year 5 curriculum. So it's been a real priority for us and for the schools to have that recovery in place. And the signs there are looking really positive. We also had more children achieving well in phonics, in the phonics test in year 1. And I would have to make the point there that in all the years that I've been the virtual school head teacher here, which is since 2011, that actually it's the first time our children have actually achieved in line with their non-cared for peers. So that was really, really good news for phonics, as well as obviously setting those children up really well for the rest of their school years. Again, really positive headlines. GCSE results improved again a little bit more since last year, as did the number of young people achieving level 3 qualifications after 16. So level 3 is the equivalent of A level. And that meant that obviously that's a year-on-year trend for us. And it's really important that at age 16 we have destinations for all of our cared for young people who go into education, training and employment. This year, our figures were the highest that I know in the region, and up to the age of 18, we have the highest proportion of young people in education, training and employment than there are nationally. So that's really good news for our young people. So in terms of what has the most influence on education outcomes for cared for children, in Northumberland there are 2 key factors that will have the greatest impact. The first is relational practice. We have an ambition in Northumberland that all of our schools are going to be attachment aware and trauma informed, and we're doing that with this strategy that's rolling out relational practice in schools. It's been very popular with the schools themselves. They've done that in collaboration with the virtual school and with our BU mental health team, with others contributing to that, like the HINT special needs teams and also the NEWS team, which operates in Northumberland. And all of them promote good emotional health and well-being, and in that way it helps young people to engage and to do their best at school, in simple terms. So we've got another conference coming up this month, Relationships Belong in Northumberland, as we continue to embed that relational practice. There are some really strong examples of that included in the report. So on page 11, the head of school at James Calvert Spence describes how she embedded a relational approach in her school. And then there is a spotlight, I've called them in the report this year. There's also a spotlight from the head teacher at the PRU. And he describes how he's used grant funding to implement that approach, but also how he's not just developed relational practice within school, but how he likes to develop good, strong relationships with other services. So, for example, with the virtual school, we've done a lot of work with them this year in terms of training staff. We even had a member of our own staff seconded for 6 months into the PRU to train up the staff and to role model good practice there. So they're 2 really strong examples that, if you haven't already taken a look at, I would strongly recommend that you do. So the second factor that has an impact on education achievement is stability. And by stability, we mean how stable a child is in their school placement. So that's looking at things like attendance and suspensions, exclusions, etc. And stability always has a bit of a double-sided story. So the good side of that story is that there were a lot of improvements last year in terms of reducing the number of mid-school year moves that there were, mid-year school moves, sorry. Also, the reduction of the number of young people who had to go to alternative provision. They were kept in their mainstream schools, which is good. And we've also maintained our quite amazing record of having had no permanent exclusions of cared for children since 2008. I will say, though, that this year we actually worked with the schools to prevent 31 permanent exclusions, but they didn't actually occur. So that's something that I'm very proud of as the virtual school head teacher, because I know how much work has to go into keeping those placements for those young people. So where stability is good, then generally achievement is good. However, the other side of that story is that there's still a lot of work to be done around reducing the number of suspensions for cared for children and improving attendance, particularly those who we describe as persistently absent from school. That means their attendance is below 90%. So I think the report identifies very clearly what our priorities have been for this year, and that's to continue to embed the relational practice, to accelerate academic progress, and to continue to improve at school. So are there any questions about the report, Chair?
Yeah. So before we come to questions, on this. I would just like to say, although it's a virtual school, you're a virtual head teacher, it's very real.
It is. It's just
And-
not a school building.
Yeah, it's just not a school building. It's a touch point in every part of our county, because I know the very first time that I ever came across the virtual, I was thinking, oh, is this like some kind of AI bot? It's not. It's very real. It's touch points in every part of our county with young people who really need that support.
It is.
So I just thought it was really important. The title doesn't actually explain the depth and breadth of what actually happens, does it?
No, it doesn't. We're omnipresent, really. I think we were all a little bit peeved during COVID that the word virtual and virtual education became something else, really, to what a virtual school is. But we've sort of settled back down into our profile again, I think. Yeah.
Just thought I'd set the record straight. Right,
Thank
questions. Mr. Hodgson, and then, yeah, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Right,
I
Alan.
enjoyed reading the report. There's a lot of positives, but just going back to the stability table there, could you just explain those two statistics for the overall absence? You've got 14.4%. Now, is that in terms of what the percentage of absences are, or is that? Well, I couldn't quite work out. Is that an 86% attendance record? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah, so we describe attendance at school as absence. I know it's a bit of a deficit figure,
Right.
but that's just how it is, how the DfE describe it, etc. So yeah.
Right.
So it really means that the overall attendance is
On
a
average,
cause for concern.
86%,
Yeah.
right? And then presumably then persistent absence is running at 69%.
Yeah, really high levels.
Yeah,
so, sorry.
No. So what I was going to say was that, you know, once you extrapolate that and see those sort of figures, that's quite alarming. But if you add that to the suspensions, which is high, I mean, I was doing just some calculations there that, I mean, on average, if you talk about the 56 pupils, you're talking about 3 suspensions a year for those students. And on average, it's 3.6 days per suspension. So therefore, you're getting up to 10 school days missed through suspensions.
Yeah.
And then if you add on, which is, say, your average pupils absent, which is probably another couple of weeks, those children are coming right down. And obviously there's persistence absence, which is doubled up with the suspensions. And obviously when you read through, you know, the sort of what we're going to do next sort of thing, you mentioned to advocate alternative approaches to try and address those issues there. What are those alternative approaches, and are there any cost implications to those?
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying about the statistics. So what we do on a weekly basis is monitor the missed sessions for all of our children. So the sessions will be missed from absence for school, for suspensions, whatever other reasons they might be out of school at a particular time. So I understand why you've drawn attention to that. Those numbers are high, and I think that's what I was saying about the stability. We've still got a lot of work to do around that, because it's still not good enough for all of the children. The overall average will tell you that, as I know you'll know, is that some children have 100% attendance, but some have a lot lower than that. So the average is brought down around that. So the main alternative and the discussion that we have with schools now is around the relational practice. So it's about working with schools around their behaviour policies and things like that to understand better how they manage situations with our cared for children, and to make sure that they understand why they might be presenting with particular behaviours in school. So the relational practice is underpinned by a lot of trauma-informed training and things like that. And it would depend on the individual child. I mean, everything we do with our 321 cared for children has got to be individual, because there'll be different reasons why there are different behaviours being presented. And there are also different reasons why some schools might be able to manage that well, and others might need a bit of support to do that management themselves. So there isn't a one strategy that we use with all children and all schools. We have to do that on a needs assessed basis.
Yeah. Well, because obviously coming back to the issue is about progress, and obviously those children with poor attendance, coupled with increased number of suspensions, it's really going to impact on their progress. And you know, you on page 13 of the report there, it said, obviously you've got the statistic there that more cared for children in Northumberland are now in outstanding schools than cared for children nationally. But the thing is that they might be attending on the register for an outstanding school, but if they're missing so much of the time through absence and suspension, they're going to lose the benefit of being at an outstanding school is going to be reduced.
Yes, I think that's well understood. I think that's the challenge that we face, and obviously the challenge that the children face when, for whatever reason, they're missing those sessions. They fall further behind their peers. Yeah. So that's really at the core of what we do in the virtual school, is to understand that better and to find services, support strategies that are going to overcome those barriers for those individual children.
I'm conscious David wants to come
Sorry,
in as well.
There was just one last point, because it was on this issue there. So have you got any interim data for 24-25 which is showing good?
Yeah,
right.
So we track everything.
So
we have
so the trend
loads of data.
is that these new approaches are making a difference?
Yes, they are.
Great.
So we have a progress tracker. It's electronic in our electronic personal education plan. So it's a live tracker, and we work on that. We have weekly briefings around where the support needs to go to which children and which schools. It's it's all done.
Thanks.
So what I'll do is, just on the subject, a bit more detail on your question. I'll bring David in. I know Vicky wanted to come in as well. So David.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Just a little technical note on the I think this is what you were saying, but the absence rates and will include the suspension days. They're not. The suspension isn't in addition to the absence. So it's not a double counting.
That's obviously not clear on the
thing. No, that's fine. I'm just pointing out. So the technical note there. It's not. But actually, on a broader sense, and just I think one of the benefits of the way Northumberland teams are set up is actually Jane's not only responsible as the virtual school head, but she's also responsible for the educational welfare service as well. Right. So, and I think that's probably been well placed in the past of joining those two roles together. In many local authorities, they would be separate and in different parts of the department. But the fact that they are together would mean that there is even more resource than might be other local authorities in order to support cared for children and attending school as often as possible. Yeah.
Vicky, did you want to come in as well? Yeah.
Just very quickly to say, I think it's make some very good points there in terms of the educational outcomes for our cared for children. And what I would say is that they are some of our most vulnerable children within the county. And this is why I'm saying, can people please go to the policy conference tomorrow, so how we can drive forward the changes that we need to make and drive forward having this as a priority, so all of our cared for children and care leavers have the best possible outcomes. I just wanted to do another plug there, I guess, to say the importance of our roles as corporate parents, and this links directly into that.
And I think just to reinforce the point there, there's not a one solution to this.
Appreciate that.
And in the report, there's a really good piece around the recruitment of a full-time educational psychologist as well, who's working. So again, it's part of a menu of things that we need to work with for some of our, probably most vulnerable young people who've got a lot of issues, not their fault, which have happened to them. And I think
one of the points I was just trying to highlight was if there are cost implications for schools, they're under pressure, and therefore sometimes they're going to have to look and say, well, we can't afford that particular strategy, and therefore it's the vulnerable kids that miss out simply because of budget pressures. So, but this would be presumably centrally funded.
I'm assuming that is the central core
Schools
funding.
have
is-
additional funding for Care for Children, so they have a pupil premium
Right.
plus, which is quite a large grant, but we have grant funding within the virtual school as well, which is absolutely to support our young people in school, and where there is additional cost on top of what the school can afford, we pay for that.
Right.
So there's always a cost, but you know, there is the funding there to support what needs to be done for our children.
Thanks.
As ever, really good questions there. Suzanne, sorry about the delay. Anyone else? And Trevor. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. There's clearly a lot of a lot of good work that goes on behind the scenes, and especially the continuity of the kids in relation to changing schools, you know, mid-term and the EP provision and preventing that, and which is amazing. Mine's just a point of clarity on I think World Book Day, so it's perfectly pertinent, and it's to do with the comment you made about the phonics. So the students have caught up to their peers on the phonics test. Now, have they caught up to their peers? Because we know that there's a lot of sort of you know, problems with post-COVID early years, or have the peers' results fallen?
Oh, well, maybe David could help with that one. I don't think they have significantly in phonics. But I think our children, it's a very small cohort of cared for children at that age. I think they have kept up with their age-related curriculum and with the achievement of their peers up to that point. David, I think it was around 76%.
Yeah, our phonics outcomes remain above the national average. They have been for a number of years now and continue to be at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slightly above, but above.
But they've not dipped in sort of since.
There's in line with national, as a standalone measure, the phonics score is probably standing up in a better position than some of our other end of key stage scores. So the fact that looked after children are performing as well as their peers is an indicator that I would suggest is an indicator that the work of Jane and her teams is supporting those young people to meet the goal, which is to achieve as well as their peers.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely confidence building. I totally get that. I just wonder how much
It
of it's
is.
to do with post-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the underlying indicator there's around the speech and language and communication, isn't it? Because a lot of our very young cared for children have delays with that because they're so young and then they're experiencing the trauma. So actually, by the time they're in year one and achieving like that in the phonics, it's a really strong signal for them as they then progress into other year groups. So it is a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Trevor.
Yes. You know, really good report, and, you know, I think it's especially good to see these children doing so well. One of my questions is, Jane, that, yeah, we've really got attendance up at school, but, you know, I think, you know, what happens in their home life, you know, as parents, we've got great aspiration for our children. These children, on the whole, are alone, and I'm just wondering if you feel that has a big impact, the fact that, you know, mum and dad aren't there pushing them on, they've got to be sort of self-driven, but you still seem to be getting the results. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's where the corporate parenting comes into it, because I would say that we're really strong corporate parents, and because of that, children don't feel alone in their education. And the majority of our children live with foster carers in very nurturing environments. So from that point of view, I would say no. I mean, obviously most of them do want to be with their birth families and don't want to be in cared for arrangements, but as good corporate parents, I think we mitigate that really, really well. And for a lot of them, they perform better or achieve better at school because they're in care. So that's something that is motivating, and we certainly try to pass those messages on to the children, and we work with the schools to pass those kind of messages on as well, that actually they aren't alone. There's a lot of people there who are there to help them, and all of them achieve something, and we're very good at identifying that and celebrating that with them. So yes, I mean, the emotional well-being side of things is so important for education, because if it's not positive, and it's not developing for any individual child, then they're not going to engage and they're not going to do their best. So we put a lot of resource into that, and we work with children early on. I think I just mentioned it before. Every cared for child has to have a personal education plan, which we call a PEP. And we work through the process of developing that plan with the carers and with the child by talking to them from a very early age about what you want to be when you grow up, like a parent would, which is what you've just said. So we try to have the conversations with children that are good, that other parents might have with their children at home. So we are aware of all of that, and I think that's what sort of combines to make it a positive experience, I would say, for most of our cared for children through school.
Good. And the other sort of slight question I've got is, are we working with other authorities? Are we sort of sharing best practice with our neighbouring authorities?
So there is now a National Association of Virtual School Heads, and we have a regional network in the North East. We have to work well together, first of all because we want to, but also because we will have children cared for children from other local authorities in our schools and vice versa. Some Northumberland children go to schools in other local authorities. So we work very, very closely together. And I mean, I suppose it gets back to Alan's question before. We want to try anything that's going to work, and we'll only know what works if we're telling each other that and sharing that good practice. So that's a really important part of how we exist as virtual schools and how we get better as virtual schools.
Thank you.
Vicky, did you want to add anything to that? It was covered.
Covered it.
Very good. Any other questions? Go on, Les.
Yeah, you say on page 12, create a new post in the virtual school. Has that been agreed?
Well, yes, because that post will be in place now. Which one was I talking about there, Les? Is it? We had a couple of new posts this year. Which one was it you were mentioning?
Is that the educational psychologist?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And the other thing
right,
is,
okay. Yes.
it has been agreed.
It's
Good.
agreed that there's a person in post.
Can I go back to the educational achievements 2024?
Yes.
I see that there are issues in reception, early years. So are you targeting that as well? I know it's a difficult area for young children, especially when they've been taken into care, but are you providing as much support as you can in that area?
David's got his hand up there, Les. If he talks first, and then I'll add in.
There is a key focus through the early years teams and all of the PVI private sector providers and childminders, and through the schools which have early years provision, to focus very strongly on cared for children. The percentages there and so on obviously don't look as strong this year as they were in the previous year, but if you just double check, I'm not trying to make any excuse for this because every single individual is hugely important, but it is only 6 learners.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's quite a small group of learners does mean that the percentages could be quite variable for some very specific reasons for maybe 3 or 4 of those children, because that's all it would be. Having said that, at the same time, you could argue that the percentages should therefore be much higher because it's only 3 or 4 children, and therefore, but it's absolutely a massive focus across the early years team and across all the providers. Jane and her team support with that also. Yeah. There's additional rates, higher funding paid for in Northumberland for early years provision for those that are cared for. We have a pupil premium plus measure which other local authorities do not have, and so that's an additional investment into this case. And for each one of those learners, how they've progressed to date will be absolutely intricately linked into their early years passport, which will they've already moved on into into their next year group, but through their passport, and therefore the schools that are completing the early years profile have all the information of everything that's taken place so far and will be best placed to make the right provision for those young people. It is a small number of learners,
Yeah,
but
small,
it remains a high focus.
Yeah, small but important. Each child is important, and I'm really pleased to hear that.
because I believe that intervention at a very early age, preschool, is paramount to good education. If you prepare a child for school, then you're halfway there, aren't you? So yeah, and we all do it as parents, don't we? We educate our children at home before they actually go to school. We do as much as we can to support them. And so we should, as corporate parents, do exactly the same. But I thank you very much for that.
Marie, I think you wanted to come in as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Just to add on the back of what David said there, that part of the Family Hub's remit is work around what they call the home learning environment, which is support for children and families around speech and language communication, promoting books, talking to children, and that's the ethos really of what we have in the Family Hubs. We link in with our libraries across Northumberland to deliver those sessions, not just within the home, within the hubs, within our outreach, but also in our library settings as well, and that's accessible for all of our children across Northumberland to be able to get that additional support. So that's well promoted before children potentially go into early year settings into school. In the old Sure Start days, we did talk about being school ready, and that was part of what Sure Starts were about. Although that's not the language that Family Hubs have at the moment, that's definitely something that we have retained across Family Hubs in terms of getting, preparing children for that next step and promoting learning, not just within the sessions, but also supporting families to be able to do that within the home environment, whether that's where to get cheap or free resources, how to make things at home, how to speak to children, putting iPads down, putting phones down, turning off the TV and promoting that engagement to support with phonics before they get into more structured education.
Great. Go on, because Marie's diving into the next report, which is really exciting, and I know you're buzzing to get to it, Les, so be quick.
I actually witnessed that yesterday. The Family Hub in Seaton Delaval, you give out books to toddlers, and the toddlers were jumping about with excitement, and they got them out of this pack, and they were trying to looking at the pictures and everything, and saying to their parents or their grandparents, I want to read it. I want to read it now. So there's that excitement, and I thank you for that. I was really thrilled to see it, and a fantastic job. Thank you.
Good stuff. So, we've had a good set of questions on the virtual head teacher report. I'm sure we'd all note the report and ask Jane to pass on to your very real staff and yourself. A huge appreciation for what you do. And I think we're all content at the, which Mr. Hodgson raised, about that weekly, almost daily, granular detail that you go into each student to make sure that the best possible outcome can happen. So we look forward to getting the next annual report with even more improvement.
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you. I'll pass your comments on to the team.
Thank you very much. Right, so we now move on to seamlessly item number 5, which is the Early Help Annual Report. Marie, if I can ask you back, and if you can introduce yourself to everyone as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name's Marie Roberts. I'm Head of Service for Social Care and Early Help within Children's Directorate. I think I have got a little bit of a presentation. There we are, as if by magic. Obviously, you have seen sight of the Early Help Annual Report, and what I've done is just pulled out a few key items from that report, just to be able to show some of the work that is going on, because Early Help in Northumberland is quite encompassing of lots of different aspects, so it's not just around family health and prevention, but we do have our family hubs as well. I'm just going to draw your attention to one of the teams that we do have that sit in our front door next to our social care front door, and that is our first contact team. Just to really highlight the amount of requests that we do get per year. So we've had over 4,000 requests through that front door for early help support in the past 12 months. So that team is vital to be able to offer that advice and guidance to families and professionals in the first instance, to be able to guide them to get the right support at the right time, at the right level. So some of the work that goes on within that team is around seeking further information from families and professionals about what the concern is, what the need is, diverting those families to the right service, putting in referrals, and if the need is there and the need is complex and the family needs further support from the local authority, that would be referred into one of our family help teams to have an assessment and full wraparound support from one of our family help workers. I'm sure you're aware that we were Ofsteded, Children's Services were Ofsteded last May, receiving that outstanding grading. And I'm just highlighting through this slideshow some of the things that Ofsted have mentioned in relation to early help specifically. So around the front door and first contact, Ofsted did note that we made well-informed decisions which were overseen by managers who are made so that the best person was put in place to support the family and what the next steps are. So I think that's quite relevant. We've already mentioned family hubs. So again, just to draw your attention to the fact that we do have 11 purpose-built family hubs right across the county, as well as 7 dedicated outreach sites, and we are constantly reviewing data, reviewing the need as to where we do deliver our services. So if we do need to deliver in a school environment or in a nursery setting, we are able to take our resources and our staff to deliver sessions for communities that do need it. So it's not just about the purpose-built, sites and the buildings that we do have. The government have extended our grant funding for another year. The Start for Life and the Family Hub funding was originally only for 3 years, which ended or coming up to end at the end of this month, but the government have indicated that we will be getting the further funding for the next 12 months, which is really, really positive to be able to sustain and to continue on the journey of developing our work that we do with families right across the 0 to 19 and up to 25, where there is children with SEND. And again, Ofsted did recognise the good work that the family hubs were undertaken by stating that our multi-agency co-located family hubs are committed to supporting families at the earliest opportunity, providing help within their communities, and when the work of family help is drawn to an end, families are supported to continue onward support with universal services. And as a result of this work, the vast majority of children have positive experiences and make good progress. So that was a good recognition for the hubs by Ofsted. Just going to draw your attention to, on the next couple of slides, some of the main areas of work that is going on right across family help. So we have our family wellbeing services. So we have practitioners that are trained to deliver low-level emotional and mental health support. We've worked with over 70 families in a really short space of time within the past 12 months. And we are integrating a pathway with our health partners, which is having a really, really significant impact on our families that are accessing services at that lower level. We continue to have healthy relationship support, and we've got a robust offer in place, and we have practitioners who are trained to support families where there is conflict, arguments, for example, within the family home that's at a lower level to domestic violence, and we support families to work through those conflicts, which obviously make the home environment better for not just them, but for their children and young people within the home. We continue to have integrated working with partners. So we have integration events on site within our hubs with partners to be able to obviously showcase what we do, but get them engaged and what we offer, so we can work together and co-deliver a lot of sessions and a lot of work that we have with our families and children, not just, as I say, within the hub environment. Things that we do deliver with partners is parenting support with our Henry, infant feeding, and charge-up sessions to our parents. We've also got co-location within the family hubs as well, and that continues to improve. So we do have our 0 to 19 partners and midwifery, as well as some mental health services that are co-located and work and deliver support to families in the communities based within the family hubs. We continue to improve our digital offer. So we've got a well-used website which outlines our Start for Life offer. We have developed in the past 12 months a simplified membership form to make it easier for parents to join up with a family hub to get that support. We've got QR codes which partners have attached to their lanyards so that families can scan on their phone to be able to go directly to websites and to see what support is on offer for them. We have a good social media presence on Instagram and Facebook to promote and advertise not just what we are offering but what our partners offer right across Northumberland for families. And we have things like digital parenting, our Dad Pad app and Family Hub apps. So if you aren't able to get into the Family Hub or to go to your nearest community venue where you can offer access support directly, parents are able to find support online and to visit various sites and obviously have parenting sessions, etc., in their own home or wherever they feel that's right for them. Because obviously we do have a lot of parents that do work, for example, so can't get into activities during the day, so we do provide an online presence. We've got a young people's offer, so we are continuing to develop youth spaces within our hubs where we can, and those are spaces that are developed for older children to be able to access and come to use. We have our healthy parenting programme that we run, and our staff are trained in what we call NVR, but it's non-violence resistant techniques to be able to promote safer parenting practices within our communities. And we collaboratively work with partners, including our voluntary organisations, to be able to access the hubs, but also offer the right support for our older children within the communities. We also have other teams which are supporting our older young people, such as the prevention element of our youth justice service. We have Sorted, which is our substance misuse team that work with children who are using or at risk of using substances, and that whether that's smoking right up to the harder, more illegal substances. And we have CPVA, which is our child to parent violence and adolescent pathway, that we work with children and families where there is violence within the home from children towards parents or grandparents. I'll mention briefly fathers because I know we have another paper on the agenda, which is a task and finish group that was in place looking at work and engagement of dads and male carers. We continue to have a strong network of fathers champions in place right across our early help system to promote and engage fathers and male carers in working and supporting them to parent and care for children and young people. We've had a huge increase in dads attending the hubs, and I think there's another slide that's got some data on. We have things like Dad Talk and Dad Pad, which supports parents and male carers to understand their parenting role and get resources to improve their parenting and to be supportive. And we do have dads represented on our parent carer panels right across the county, as well as having a dad summit, which was a whole workshop day that we held with members, with our partners, to highlight the importance of engaging parents and carers of the male variety right from the start and the importance of doing that. We continue to have our parent carer panels. We've currently got 9 panels in place with 41 established regular members, and we continue on looking to recruit members to that panel right across Northumberland from all different aspects of life. It's not just parents that are currently attending hubs. It's carers, it's male carers, it's parents with children where they send, it's parents of ethnic minority young people. So we've got a vast cohort of parents to be able to guide and support and co-produce how early help runs, what we offer, and the direction of travel for services in the future. We do also have 22 registered volunteers who support parents within the hubs with activities. Another good news story, we have also received UNICEF Level 3 accreditation for our breastfeeding, which is very, very difficult, and there's not many local authorities who've actually got this status. So this is a testament to the hard work that our staff and our partners undertake within our communities and our hubs. They work so hard to be able to support our families to be able to breastfeed and support parents and male carers on that journey. I've briefly spoke about our family help teams. So we have 4 family help teams that are based within our family hubs that work with children and parents where there is complex needs. So it's not quite hitting the safeguarding remit and needing to have a social work support them. Again, just to highlight some of the work that they have done, we have had 1,330 different episodes. So that's families that have been supported in the past 12 months with family help plans. So what happens is there's an assessment undertaken of the family, of all their needs, a team wrapped around the family and the relevant support put in place to be able to support those children and families with whatever need and concern that they may have. And where we have closed those families, those cases down, 80% of them have ended successfully. So there's been positive improvements, which is an absolutely outstanding number. And in relation to Ofsted highlighted that family help workers in the multi-agency family hub support children to make positive improvements. Early help assessments are detailed and thorough, and children's contributions are noted to highlight their views in their own words, and plans are based on what children say and what is important to them, which is really, really key. So it's not just what professionals think families need, what do parents think they need, but actually what do children think, and taking their views into consideration. As part of our early help offer, we've also have the early help element of our youth justice service, which is called Turnaround. And again, the government have indicated that they will be extended our turnaround funding for a further 12 months. So the good work that we are doing to prevent children within Northumberland to come into the youth justice system and offend, that will continue. So in the past 12 months turnaround, we have seen the young people that we work with, 89.7% of them have not gone on to reoffend when that case is closed, which is again a really, really high number. And we've also got our sorted team, which, as I've already mentioned, work with our children where there is concerns around substance misuse. And they've worked with 393 young people in the past 12 months. And just to highlight that, we do have a continuing trend of cannabis use being the highest reason for referral and support needing to be put in place for our young people. There is just a couple of different bits of data that I'll just draw your attention to, which is around membership of our family hubs having increased by 15% in the past 12 months. So that continues to be a trend of increasing families that are accessing support with our family hubs. There's been a 30% increase in parents attending programmes. And I'll just quickly mention about the fathers, 608.8% increase in fathers access and support from family hubs, which is an astounding number. Improvement in breastfeeding figures. There is a new measure of the impact of programmes, and talking to our parents, they have told us in 95% of cases that they do feel that there is an improvement in themselves being able to support their families and feeling better to, parent moving forward. 95% of families tell us they've had a positive experience when they've worked with early help in the family hubs, and that's from our family satisfaction survey. And we've seen an increase in a good level of development for our children when they are going into school at the age 5 by 1.3%. So we do, obviously, it's a continuing with what's next, what do we need to improve on, what more can we be doing. It's a continuing journey. We are going to be doing some more work within the youth justice system to extend our early help offer. Further work with our schools, rolling out harm outside of the home training across all of our staff. More work around nicotine. Funding from public health for a worker to support around nicotine reduction and the use of vaping, which we know is on the rise nationally, not just in Northumberland. So there'll be further work to support and prevent that from happening. Further work around non-violence resistant techniques to be used right across the early help system. We're going to be introducing our sorted drop-ins within the family hub so that our young people can access more support and come into the hubs when they feel that they want to in a more relaxed environment rather than referring themselves in a more formal setting into the service, and more work around sleep and supporting not just children but teenagers to be able to get consistent good sleep and what that looks like. So, you know, reduction of use of phones and iPads before you go to bed, the importance of getting a good, you know, 8 hours sleep, for example. And we've also going to be introducing a NUST worker, so our mental health support service worker, into working with our family help teams to support our staff and our families with mental health support. So a lot to go on and do in the next 12 months.
Audrey, I think you wanted to step in as well, just before we come to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members are probably aware that, well, for probably the last 2 or 3 years, we've had a number of reports nationally around children's social care with a whole raft of recommendations, and we've seen different changes over time. But actually, we're starting to see the implementation following some pathfinders around change in children's social care. And what we know is early help, family help, we already call really our early help family help in Northumberland. We're a bit ahead of the curve in terms of that. That will be a key priority for change and how the system works nationally. So you have just heard from Marie how we do things here in Northumberland, and that positions us really well to be able to do that. We're poised around some of the responses, but we will be cautious to give you some assurance, because what we don't want to do is lose that really good core work that we have as a baseline. We want our children and families to be able to continue to access that, the broadest range possible. Of course, what it also supports is that prevention agenda and doing so much more. And I know a couple of committee members have already referred to it today, that the earlier, the sooner that we can work with children and families, the better we can support their outcomes longer term. Thank you.
Any questions from members? Mr. Hodgson and then Les.
Could I just take you back to that first quote you gave me, or gave us, just under the map of where your hubs were?
Was it the Walkman?
Well, it finished off by saying Ofsted said that the children make good progress.
Right. Just sorry, I'm trying to find the right page because there was several quotes. Right. Oh yes, I have it. Yes, I think it was the second slide. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask, is that statement based on comparative data?
So that,
I mean, I'm saying, who makes good progress, and against what measure are they making good progress, and what do they actually mean by good progress? What are the factors that they measure?
Yeah, okay.
Do you mean in terms of academic progress?
I don't know.
So,
Ofsted is simply saying they make good progress.
So when Ofsted come in, they look at a range of different things in the work that we do. So it covers everything all the way from early help right the way through into our statutory work that we do. So they are looking at, you know, the children and young people and their families who are accessing the hubs. They're then looking at the prevention element of it to say
So are they using comparative data to measure the progress?
No.
So, sorry, I was going to say something and I thought I would just pop in. So what they're not using is attainment progress. They're not using that measure in its comparative.
Right.
What they look at is when Ofsted come in for it's called our inspection of local authority children's services, the ILACs. What they look at is frontline social worker practice. So they look at every documentation. They'll take some individual case studies and they'll deep dive and follow them through to look at what the teams, and that might be Marie's team, it might be Jane's team, so there might be a bit of virtual school. They will cross-reference every aspect that, if you like, links with the family and with the child, and look at the difference that the work has made, and that's what the progress relates to, the comment there, not purely educational comparative.
So what's the baseline?
So it depends on that individual child. So they will look at their starting point.
That's what I'm saying. So what are the starting points? I'm saying that it's trouble is when you get a statement like "made good progress," how do we interpret that against what? What are they making good progress against?
Can I just come back in there, or is that all right? So I think the bit of the quote that you're referring to is when Ofsted were referring to the family help teams and seeing positive improvements that children were making. So in this particular instance, what they would have been looking at is the children that were open on family help plans. They will be looking at where they were at the start of their journey. So there's a full assessment undertaken, and they would be looking to see what the concerns were, you know, how things look for that child. And it could be a range of things. It could be what their attendance looks like, what's their emotional well-being, what's going on for the family. And during the course of that intervention that we put in place for that child and family, there is monthly reviews that take place, and the journey sort of charted within our systems and our paperwork, so you can see what that progress looks like in those individual aspects. But we also grade our casework. So we get with our signs of safety model, we score where the family is at that time. So on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, we would score that
as
case
as
a baseline.
And then you measure that.
Yeah, where is that family? So when we start working with the family, it may be that the family scored at a 2 or a 3, or whatever that looks like. And every month when we review the plan, we make tweaks, we have a look to see what the progress of that child and family is at each of those individual aspects.
And that's what the progress is.
The progress will be improving. So what Ofsted are referring to is the case sampling and the dip sampling and the auditing that they look at as part of that inspection. They've seen those improvements as part of the journey for that child and that family.
I can see it now, but it was just that vagueness.
Sorry, I was just trying to find exactly what part you were referring
you're
to.
Absolutely spot on. Brilliant. Thanks for that, because I can see clearly now what they mean and how you can measure it and see it, and you could even compare year on year and also. And the other point, again, which is a fantastic success in that you've got 4,000 plus referrals with an 80% success rate, was you quote there. You just flip that, and that's 20% for whatever reason weren't successful. Now, if you put that numerically, that's 800 cases. Now, what happens to those that aren't deemed to be a successful intervention? What then happens to those significant numbers?
So the 4,000 referrals that number equates to the numbers of requests we get for support. So that number, they all don't go to getting the family help support that we're talking about. So those 4,000, contacts that we would get through the front door, our Family First team filter those out. So they would make referrals into various services, they would talk to the families, they would send to partner agencies. Of those 4,000, we then had 1,330 that came through to be opened as a family help active case, and it's of
so
those
80,
that 80% of those,
80% of those,
or 80% of those. So just to come back on that 20%. Of that 20%, those cases would be closed for a mixture of reasons. So it's not necessarily that they haven't had any success. It could be the family have moved out of the area, they've moved to a different local authority, so that case is transferred. It may be that the family have decided that they don't want that intervention at that point, that they've changed their mind for whatever reason, because obviously it's a consent, early help is consent-based. It may be that we will have some of those families that have then actually stepped up because risks have worsened and there is now safeguarding concerns. So those families have then moved into the safeguarding arena. So there will be a number of those. And it's not to say that those families haven't had positive outcomes within the safeguarding arena. It's just not recognised within the early help number.
So you'd be confident that none would slip through the net. It's just that when you say move away, one of the dangers is, and you see that in the papers there, by moving away, they take the problems and the children who potentially are in danger are moved away from, say, the protective care of Northumberland County Council.
So what we would do in those instances, we would speak to the local authority where the family was moving to transfer that case to the local authority and to highlight any concerns or need that that family has, so we could try to have that streamlined provision and there's no gap in service for that family. So, for example, if a family moves into Cumberland, Newcastle, North Tyneside, we would have those discussions with our counterparts to highlight the fact that the family is moving into their area and that they would get support from their early help services within the new local authority that they will live in. But we try our utmost if we feel that the family needs our support. It's on us to engage with the family. So the emphasis is very much on not the family are engaging with us, but our staff are highly skilled and trained to be able to promote what we offer and the benefits for the family to try to keep them engaged with us as long as we feel that they need that support.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Again, Les.
Yeah, thank you for the report. It's all encompassing, but I think there's a couple of chapters missing. It might be just my perception, but the first one I thought it was missing was on child poverty. Is that something you look at? Is it something you take care of? Is it something you investigate? And then the other chapter, which I think is missing, is what I term as traditional youth work. That doesn't seem to be in the report either. Can you comment on that as well?
Okay. So in relation to child poverty, obviously it is a concern that we do have. It's nationally, and locally within the North East. My department doesn't look specifically at child poverty, but it's part of the work that we would do to support families. So if a family is highlighted to us in terms of any need and support around poverty, we would make the relevant referrals to ensure that that family and that child was getting the right support. So whether that was supporting them to access benefits, we do have commissioned into the early help services 2 workers that are from the DWP that work with families around ensuring that they are accessing everything that they are entitled to be accessing and supporting them to be able to do that. We also support families with accessing various array of charitable trusts to be able to get that added support within the family. So we do support families as much as we possibly can if we are highlighting that there is concerns around issues around finances, for example.
Just come back on that one. So you keep a record of it, you monitor it as you go along.
I think that's...
Chair, can I come in on that one? So Councillor Bowman, you'll recall we have a poverty lead, a senior manager, who is Emma Richardson, and Emma's been to this committee, so Emma works really closely. She is part of Children's and works across the whole breadth of Children's, and Emma does all of that link work. It sits very closely within that, and then for example, Emma's team, particularly around the holiday activity funds or any referrals around benefit, it is Emma's team who hold that data and information, and we keep that as a core. Marie's information, it all gets cross-referenced so that we ensure that families are able to access, because actually we might get a direct referral in to the poverty team or for any of our support fund areas, that actually the team might feel an early help referral is appropriate, and so Emma's team would cross-reference into Marie's team or any of the children's services teams.
And in addition to that as well, as I was just going to say, on the report, it very clearly says that this links into our corporate priorities, which is tackling inequalities. So all of this is inextricably linked.
Okay.
Right. So, any other questions?
Can she answer the second part?
Sorry.
Trying to cut me off.
It's all right. So just around our support for our older young people cohort, obviously really important. We don't want to miss out on that, because I think traditionally family hubs are seen as being for those younger children, but we are trying to move away from that and offer as much support as we possibly can to our older young people. So where we can, we have developed spaces within our family hubs where young people can come to use, whether that's the pool table in there or, I was going to say a jukebox, but I think that sounds really old. Not a jukebox. So that they can use that as a bit of a drop-in space. We also have sessions that we run for older young people as well, so that they can come and use that as I'll not say youth club, but of a bit of a youth space. So we are trying to move away from the traditional youth offer that used to be in place in terms of youth clubs, because what we are seeing and what our young people are telling us, and we have done surveys with our young people to ask them about what they see as being their need, their issues, what they want to see, what support they feel they need. So we are investing in things around supporting parents to better understand and to be able to support their own children within their home and their community. Mental health support is absolutely key. So we have put in and trained staff to be able to offer that within the family hubs and the early help remit, as opposed to having to access that mental health support primarily within school or within the more structured remit of CAMS or SIPs, for example. And obviously the support that they get from our youth justice system and or sorted. We've also had young people's workers in place for the past 12 months as well, that work and link with our voluntary sector organisations who do offer the more traditional youth work within the communities, to be able to link our young people into the right and the most appropriate voluntary youth programme that is in their community for them. So looking at what their interests are, where they live, what they want to access, where they want to access, to be able to be that link in between. And just to say as well, we do have an early help partnership board that oversees everything we do in the whole early help system in Northumberland. And we've got various strands under there, working groups, and we do have one that is for our older young people, and we do have our voluntary sector that sit on that, so that there is a whole conversation and work going on to support and to identify where are the gaps, what do we need to put in place, what's accessible, how do we link our young people into what they need within their own communities.
I'll just bring in Audrey, and then Councillor Chicken wants to say something as well.
Thank you, Chair. Marie's just said what I was going to say around the Early Help Partnership Board, so at least we're joined up. I think the key bit for me is the needs-led. So actually we are listening to our young people, and I hope committee members have not just heard that around our youth offer and young people's support, but actually if you think about that remit around family hubs and the partnership working, so that engagement. Councillor Bowman, you may have seen it if you were in there yesterday, but the amount of times that I go into family hubs, and we've got midwives in there, we've got registrars in there, we've got health service operatives in there who are co-located, but actually it's the opportunity to be visible to families who sometimes may be a little more reluctant. So that needs-led approach in all of our service areas, and particularly with our young people, is really strong in this department, strong across children's, but actually in our early help and the development work that we'll have to do, it's a real strong core for us. Thank you.
Try that one.
There we go. Thank you. One of the things that I've said, and I will continue to say umpteen times, my most favourite thing about the family hub is just how seamless it is. When you compare that to what we used to have in place beforehand, the fact that it goes from pregnancy right the way through to 18 or up to 21, if the needs of that young adult are such, it's seamless. They're going to the same team. They're going to the same authority all the way through. Even when staff members change over, which doesn't happen all of the time, but naturally you'll have people retiring and moving on. That person, that young person, is with the same team who have the same set of guidelines, who have the same understanding. But you can work with the whole family. So it isn't having young ones with a particular programme here, an older one's with a particular programme there, and another one there that you've got to go to, and it's all a bit disjointed. The whole family, it is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a family hub, and it does that all the way through. That seamless approach is so key to keeping those families on track and to eventually seeing them to the point where they may not need the family hub, but they know that it's there if they do need it in the future. They may well have thought that they've fixed all problems that they could possibly fix, everything's all hunky-dory, and then you get to the troublesome teen years, and they know that that support is there, that they can go back to the same team, to visit the same people, and get that job done. And I really do think that is one of the best things that this council has ever done. I really do.
Thank you. Please feel free, Vicky, dive in.
It's just to say that if anybody does want to visit any of our family hubs, please just reach out and we can arrange for that and show you around and show you what the offer actually is in the different family hubs as well. So please just, drop us a line and we can arrange that.
Great, thank you. So we've been asked to note the report, which I'm sure we've done, some good, valuable questions. And again, I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here. If Marie, we can pass on our thanks to you and the team for the sterling work that you've done. So thank you very much for that. We now move on to another annual report, and it's that of the Children's Principal Social Worker. Sue, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to everyone and then take us through the highlights of the report.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm Sue Corr. I'm the Principal Social Worker for Northumberland County Council, and I also chair the Regional Principal Social Worker Network as well. Thank you today for providing the time for me to update you on the work of the Principal Social Worker, considering the quality of practice and development needs of our frontline social workers. Again, as it's been stated, our key priorities align with Northumberland's Children and Young People's Plan, specifically around tackling inequalities. Regarding retention and recruitment, there remains a significant challenge nationally and regionally around shortages of children's social workers. However, in Northumberland, we've done a lot of work to really kind of look at how we can stabilise our workforce and really pleased with the outcome that we have currently. Our turnover rate is lower than the national average, and our caseload average at the moment is 15. The focus for us remains on the consistency of workforce, because we fully understand that for children and families to have kind of the chance to succeed with our support, we need a stable workforce, so it's at the forefront of our minds. With that said, what we do is we continue to focus on growing our own. I lead on all of the academy recruitment, and I've done that since 2018, and we're really pleased to see that through the recruitment, we now have from that alumni team managers and also advanced practitioners really kind of staying with Northumberland and focusing on positive outcomes for the children of Northumberland. We've taken on 15 last year, 15 newly qualified social workers in 2024, and we can continue to always try and look at and pre-plan about what our forward focus looks like, rather than kind of being reactive. Wellbeing initiatives are so important in terms of making sure that we have stability of social workers. We need to have support, and we do have a very good support for vicarious trauma. Because of the nature of children's social work, there can be a lot of emotion connected to that, with working with some of the most vulnerable children and families in Northumberland and wider. So with that said, that's really important. They have access to our occupational health services, and also our NUST emotional support team is engaging very well with our workers to make sure they're fully supported. As you're aware, when sometimes children situations hit the headlines, and that can really affect staff morale. We really need to make sure that we're holding our staff at that time when those challenges occur, because the staff come in to do a very good job. They care deeply about children and families, and it's very important that that's recognised. And sometimes media outcomes can kind of impact on that. So we're very much about the well-being of staff in that regard. With that said, what we know is we need to continually develop our staff. We don't want to rest on our laurels. We're extremely proud and humbly proud of the outstanding recognition by Ofsted. However, we always feel we have work to do, and we always want to kind of continually progress and develop our staff. What we do, if we have a comprehensive training package, we have a lot of that internally. I deliver the cultural competence training, I deliver training on chronology. We try and utilise what we have internally as much as possible to really have that kind of relational engagement with our staff as well. Quality assurance is very, very important to us. We complete regular audits. We have practice days, and actually just recently we've done quite a few practice days with the family hubs and the family help teams, and we've got a real cohesion and effective working, relational working arrangement. And I think that's part of our success, if I'm honest, with working together and looking at what we can do collectively. We also, what's very important for us when we complete audits and when we complete practice days is having the interaction with children and families, the ones who we are here for at the end of the day. So we always want to seek their voice, hear what they have to say. Our signs of safety practice model, when we were talking about scaling, that's part of that, looks at working with children and families as opposed to, and that's really important for us to be doing that as well. As I said, we're very proud of the outcome of Ofsted, but what we really want to focus on now is our future priorities. There's been a care reform, a government care reform, looking at how children's services can make sure that it's meeting the needs of our children nationwide and locally. With that said, it's very important that we try and keep children close to family, close to kin. That's important to us as well. We focus on looking at what the networks are. My personal remit is always starting with the end in mind. We don't want to be involved with children and families longer than we need to. It's their right to have their right to a private family life. And with that said, what we're always looking at is what kind of support, universal package, wraparound support can help. And I know clearly, and I've observed it, our family help is an excellent offer that supports with that when children don't meet the threshold any longer for social work. So what we continue doing is looking at that, look at what the reviews, the care review looks like and what we have to kind of implement moving forward. We continue to enhance our CPD, depending on what the themes are nationally and globally, around what the requirements are for children and families. You touched upon poverty, we're very conscious of that. We're very conscious that in the North, so on national meetings, I'm always kind of encouraging the levelling up of the North East. As we know, poverty's rife up here, and it's important that we get our share, actually, of what's rightfully our children and families' progress and support. And also what we've been doing recently more so is encouraging our social workers in some parts of the recording to write directly to the child. We're finding it's really kind of humanising that element of that interaction. At the end of the day, it's about them. It's not about agencies. It's not about us as individuals. It's about positive outcomes for children and also breaking those generational cycles sometimes. So really proud of the Ofsted recognition, but continue to have work to do and pleased to be doing that. So open to any questions.
Right. So thank you, Sue. I will open the floor to any questions from any members. Right, so I'm not seeing any, so this will give me an opportunity. Right, we have Mr. Hodgson. I was wondering there.
No, okay.
Go on.
Well, there's a couple of things. I think the statistics are really positive, aren't they, when you look at against national and regional figures there. But the one that really does stand out is the number of days lost to sickness.
Yes.
It really, and when you compare, say, the year, 21-22 was coming out with COVID, and yet you've 23-24 was nearly a 3 times increase on that.
So
I know you give the breakdown of what they were, but it just seemed high, that.
I think what it is there's a couple of things with this. The impact of kind of the vicarious trauma of the role that staff do. It's a very challenging role. Also, when you're thinking about COVID times, the people who were studying at that time did not have, they were doing that online. There wasn't that, because our academy model is very much a relational, where it's an in-person practice. You're learning by osmosis, you've got that support. And actually, our directors, even at that time, were and Audrey, were very positive and kind in terms of making sure that our academy staff were in. working with us, with obviously adhering by the space that was required, etc. However, the students, there are a lot of elements really. The students at that time didn't study the same way as the rest of the students have. So I wonder whether some elements are a little bit of that in terms of kind of, we support greatly and we're, you know, very involved with occupational health. What we try and look at is the preventative element, and making sure that we're there before somebody needs to go off sick. But I think, you know, COVID's continued, health issues are impacted by that, and I can't actually answer exactly why that has happened. I don't know if there's anything else to
No,
add.
it just seemed, you know, I mean, it was virtually double from the year before. You know, it's quite high, but again, I expect the positive is that you haven't had to fill the gaps with agency work, which again would have a negative impact on work.
Absolutely, but also if you look at the number, it's probably long term for a minimal amount of people as opposed to lots of, you know, so that sometimes impacts. And we've had, unfortunately, you know, we've had people with serious illnesses, unfortunately, which has impacted on that. And as an employer, we want to try and do the right thing, you know, by the members of staff, by supporting them fully. But that there is a, you know.
And the other question was just on recruitment. Obviously, it's a national issue in that. But do you actively look to recruit in the southeast of England, where I would imagine the opportunities and the quality of life that we could offer up here would way outweigh? I mean, I'm just thinking, I mean, for the first 10, 11 years of my career, I worked in London and struggled to buy a house. And when my family came along there, the first thing I did was to start looking for jobs, obviously back home, but obviously I had that link. But to me, that would be a rich vein of recruitment, and do you actively seek that? I know it would be the cost of London, but at the end of the day, we're got to look after ourselves, haven't we?
So it was just last year I was down in London during a community care inform event, selling our wares of Northumberland and how beautiful it is, and also cost of living, housing, you know, excellent schools and all of that. Anything that, you know, social workers are humans as well. They want what everybody else wants as well in terms of for their children and families as well. And for, you know, for their parents and everyone. So we've done that. We've looked at that. What we find is we've found our model of growing our own has been a lot more successful. So I'm bringing in a lot of apprentices at the moment as well. We've got 8 in the pipeline at the moment, and what we found is we've selected excellent practitioners in different areas. So some have come from family help, some have come from our education services, etc. And what that's done is it's ensured that there's stability where they live in Northumberland, so there's more chance of them staying. Because the other issue we found about when I was doing that recruitment drive was if their families aren't with them, so they're all kind of quite stable, I suppose, in terms of having their family networks around them. And that's probably been one of the reasons they've not necessarily wanted to relocate. Even when I'm recruiting, when we recruit, we want people who are going to stay with us. We don't want them to utilise our excellent academy.
It goes recruitment and retention, isn't it?
That's right.
It too. But no, I was just thinking in terms of, because you know, it's recruitment of experienced staff, and I expect in a way it complements the fantastic work that you're doing through the academy, and they're obviously the graduates that have just come out through universities and so on. And I expect it's that trying to get the experience to come and to complement
absolutely what we're mindful
your homegrown talent.
And regionally, what we're mindful of, and we work very well in a lot of capacity, me as in our role of principal social workers, there's other regional collectives, if you like. What we're very aware of, and I think it's really important, is we don't want to be poaching other LA's staff. We want their children to have stability as well. So that's why we want to make sure that we grow our own, retain them, and have a consistent workforce that can meet our children and families' needs. And also, you know, we're mindful, aren't we? Everything is about relationships. And if there's a stability of our workers, like you're saying, you know, in family help, the families can go back. You touched upon that earlier around, you know, from children to when they're teens and to older. We want that relational, there's that person. And that's why we drive to kind of grow our own. And that's been if I'm honest, successful for us to wood.
Thanks, Sue.
Vicky, did you want to come in as well? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that in regards to agency workers, we have actually reduced quite significantly our use of agency workers. We've filled an awful lot of our vacancies. We've got a whole recruitment campaign that's going to be launching, which again is really positive. I sit as part of the regional, what's called the MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding around agency use. There has been new regulations that's come in, driven by the government, to try and minimise, I guess, agency workers moving for pay rates. So we're all going to be sitting on exactly the same rate. We're all committed to sitting within that Memorandum of Understanding. And we're in a really strong position with regards to that, because I think by the end of March, we'll have reduced our agency use down to about 5 or 6 workers. We've had a few workers who have become permanent staff, which is really positive for us, because they've worked with us, they know the ethos that we have, the culture that we have, and actually they want to be permanent. So that's really, really good. So there's always a lot of work that goes on around how we recruit and then how we retain. There'll be more work that's coming because of the reforms and because of how the reforms are driving the structure in terms of experience and what that looks like. So we're going to be mapping all of that out and looking at how our workforce meeting can look at that a little bit differently. Just going back to the sickness, I think that was really touched on. Some of that sickness around anxiety and stress may well be driven by 1 or 2 people where they've got longer term sickness as well. And as Sue did say, it is, you know, a lot to do with the work that we do, you know, going into families' homes where there is a lot of issues that are happening within those homes, and the impact of what you actually see, what you hear on a daily basis as well.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry.
Outstanding, you know, the Ofsted grade. Do you think that's got a help in terms of recruitment?
I think it does, but I think it's a combination of word of mouth as well, because for me, a lot of it is based on the culture, what you work in, you know, so you may well have...
It's an endorsement, isn't it,
yes,
of everything
it's an
doing?
Endorsement of the work that you do, and then that word of mouth around actually the positiveness of the culture, the work environment, how we're structured, the support that's on offer, and how that's then implemented to keep people in the roles. I mean, since I've joined in September, I've come across people who've been here for 20, 25 years because they're absolutely committed to the children and young people that we're working with, and the families as well. It's really heartening to see, and they talk so positively about the environment that we have here too.
Yeah.
But in terms of the culture, I think what's important is during recruitment and otherwise, when people say, what is your culture? You know, during interview, what I say is, you bring the culture. You bring what you want the culture to be. We you know, and I think that we've been very successful. We've got excellent leaders who, you know, support us around reverse mentoring. You know, we can have a conversation. There's not that worry about will it be well received. It's a relational conversation that seems to have worked, and we've got a very positive culture that we're very proud of.
Good. And it almost brings me seamlessly to your point about outstanding, because I can say this with a little bit of experience. So when I was deputy leader, the very, very, very first briefing that I got from the then executive director told me that the family courts did not like this council at all. Reports were missing information, reports were late, they were often not suitable, not fit for purpose. That was back in 2017 when our Ofsted was not particularly good. And following on from that, there was a concerted political support and officer direction to turn things around. So from that initial, which was quite a scary briefing that I got with the family judge who did not like us at the time, the academy was set up. So I had the honour of actually presenting the first scrolls to that cohort in 2018. I hope they're still here. But it was transformative. So it was understanding an issue, understanding a problem and understanding what we needed to do to turn it around. So from that really scary briefing that I had about one element of our social work, which is that interaction with the family courts, that's transformed. Judge Hudson loves us. I am right in saying that? Yes, everyone's nodding. Yeah, good. There has, and it's the same judge that didn't. There has been a transformation in terms of the practice, the support, the leadership, and the opportunities for working here. Yeah. And this is testimony to the leadership that we have within that team. And I think it also, touching on what you'd said there, is an exemplar to other areas about how you can grow your own, because we were heavily dependent on social workers from other areas. I know that one particular local authority was constantly poaching. That memorandum of understanding now has ended that. The whole issue around agency workers coming in, so that's now massively reduced, so we have a stabilised workforce. It's a workforce we're developing our own through that academy model, with that nurturing support, the opportunity to develop their careers, which I think is fantastic, because of everything that we do as a local authority, this has probably one of the biggest impacts. Going out there, the touch points in our community with some families who really need those social workers, it's such an important role. And it's, you know, this is almost like a hidden service that we have. And I think it's good that we've got the press here, because this will actually tell people that as an authority, we've got staff who are committed to supporting the most vulnerable in our communities, who help turn their lives around. But not only that, it's a great place to come and work. Yeah. So, and that's testimony to the fact that we've got the academy model, we've got the, I'm assuming, graduate apprentices that we're developing through the social work model. So I think it is an exemplar of fantastic practice for other local authorities to see how you can turn around a failing service and turn it into what is now an outstanding service. So it can be done. And actually, the end result are those people out in our community who will have their lives transformed as a result of what Sue and her team and this leadership team here actually do. So, you know, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everybody again, but I just would like to make sure that we pass on all thanks to all those staff, to the academy cohort who come in, so that constant flow of people, so that they understand the massive support that we have. Catherine, did you want to add something as well? Oh, sorry, I didn't see. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks very much, because I think you were just summing up there, weren't you? I was just looking at this. I know social work is a very challenging, very worthy and, you know, career, but it wouldn't suit everyone. I'm really concerned when I look at these absences here. I mean, that's 3 years of days, you know, for due to emotional health. And when it says 31 occurrences, is that for the same person, or what does that mean?
So it would be 31 different kind of individuals, and those numbers feed into that 31.
So it's 31 individuals for
that's
that.
Right. So
okay.
Some of them could be, there was a couple of the long-term ones, so that would take a chunk of the...
I see, okay. Days. And the other reasons, there's no, what would the other reason section be for? Just as other reason, but...
I'm not actually sure, because there's quite a breakdown of what the
reasons
are.
That's why I was
and sometimes, yes, I could certainly go back and try, and some don't want to say per se. Obviously, we need to know why staff are off, but the data shows that, and I can go back and certainly for next year make sure that it's very clear for you what the other looks like.
Yeah, because it's 531. I guess it's almost like a year and a bit of days.
I'm guessing there'll be something that doesn't fit one of our standard categories, but I'd want to be I think I'd want to be really careful and not specifically, you know, identify anything in a report for us. So
right. The other concern I have is with this new bill coming in now, where you can be, you know, off sick from the first day, if you like, paid off sick from the first day. I'm just wondering, you know, with the government bill that they're talking about. I don't know about that. You're not aware of that?
So this is the
This is the
ability for a
government bill.
worker from day one starting employment to be entitled to take sickness leave.
Be sickness from the first day of employment, if you like. Anyway, I'm just wondering, because of all these factors, the fact there's so much sickness, and if anyone's employed, again, I'm just wondering, are you, taking on more staff? Are you looking at increasing the staff level in order to cover the workload?
So I'm guessing our HR department will be looking at the implications of any change in policy and practice. Currently, we are not covering, we don't have a need to cover additional staff and hours, so we have sufficient capacity within the team.
And I'm sure that there is an action plan which sits behind any sickness or blips within any of the business units within the local authority. So that will absolutely be looked at. And the fact that we're getting it reported shows the transparency that we have. Les, I'm really keen to move progress. Is it a relevant question? Yeah.
Thank you for the report. I noticed the sickness levels, and I do realise that the work you do is very stressful, and the reasons for those stresses can be complex. And I do think it's an amazing career for people to move into to support our communities. And I want to thank you and your team for the fantastic work that you do. And I know it's very responsible, and sometimes you may make decisions and you wonder in the early hours of the morning if you made the right decision or not. But I trust that everything is professional. And I do recognise that the challenges in our community are immense, that families and individuals and children as well are suffering with poverty and the stress of financial crisis within their lives. But it's not just financial crisis, it could be all sorts of family issues. And I want to just praise you for that. You do an amazing job. I know that when you've intervened in my ward with various families, you've actually enhanced their family and their lives, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Noted. Right.
It's non-political, by the way.
Exactly. Noted. Well done. So please pass on your thanks to everyone. Much appreciated. So we've noted the report, and we now move on to item number 7. Thank you, Sue, by the way. Item number 7, which is the Access to Family Hubs Task and Finish Group report. And I'm going to ask Councillor Chicken, who chaired that Task and Finish Group, to take us through this section. So, Eve.
Thank you, Chair. One of our responsibilities in this committee is to identify areas of interest, concern, something that we feel that we want to delve into a little bit deeper. So a couple of months ago, we decided that we would look into helping and improving fathers, basically, their ability to be dads and to work with us as a council, and how do we get those programmes to dads, how do we get dads involved in those programmes and making those programmes actually fit dads. So we were joined by, there was Marie, very good, by the way. Really thank you for coming along and doing what you did. One of the best things about that group actually was your previous experience in working with Sunderland councils and places like that, where you could compare for us what we're looking at as a more northeast term, and to see where we're going with that. Within that room, we also had Councillor Swinburne, and we had Councillor Scott, and we had Councillor Bowman as well. And Rebecca, who was taking notes very quickly, by the way, well done. Within the group, we identified a few areas that we thought we needed to improve on, and quite a lot of that we focused on the dad pad. Within Family Hub, the dad pad has been created, which is the most wonderful tool. It really is fantastic. I introduced an older father to the dad pad quite recently, who was quite astonished as to what he could get at 2 o'clock in the morning when baby wouldn't sleep. And that is mirrored across the board with this. One of the areas that we did identify within this task and finish group is that we're not really reaching dads in a way that we should, because historically, families and children's services have been very concentrated on mothers and female carers. With Family Hub, we go from pre-birth right the way through to 18 to 21, but we were really concentrating on that first 1,001 days. How do we get dads to really work with the council, work with mothers, work with their other peer groups, and how to get them to access the information that they need? One of the things that we identified that we could do to actually help that along was to introduce the dad pad to places where men are far more likely to actually go. If a gentleman feels like the support groups are going to be more like a knit and natter group, or more like a chat about Celebrity Love Island, they're not going to go. They're just not. Fatherhood is hard. It's as hard as motherhood. And sometimes society makes it that little bit harder because we don't put these bits in place. When we can take the dad pad and put it into sports clubs, when we can put it into organised settings, encourage dads and let them know that the services that we have through Family Hub are for them. They're not just for mothers. It isn't a mother and baby group, it's a parent and baby group. It's not just a mother and early years or a mother and teen group. It is family orientated. Some families don't have mothers in them. They are just dads. We were able to identify a few areas that we would push this dad pad into and see that come back. Like I say, I've already introduced it to a gentleman quite recently who was over the moon with it. It seems to be doing very, very well, and our uptake on men integrating into that Family Hub, as you well heard, has been absolutely tremendous, and that is only down to the hard work of your team. It really is. What you were able to tell us within that group, Marie, was very, very interesting, and the completely different dynamics, because we're not just talking about dad who has a stable job, who has the wife and 2 kids at home. We're also talking about young fathers, very, very young fathers, teenage fathers, much older fathers who are out of the loop, who feel completely alien to apps, to talk groups, to things like that. They've been out of the system for a long time, and we're really, really progressing with that. I would like to bring Marie in to have a little chat on that and to put a bit forward, but then I would also like to get some feedback from somebody else who was in the task and finish group.
Thank you, Councillor Chicken. I think obviously it was a very, very in-depth discussion that we had in that task and finish group, and we looked at, I guess, charting the history, I think, and not just for engagement with family hubs, but services right across all of the children's system, from when somebody is pregnant with a baby right through school. And we did talk a lot about our individual experiences in the room, family experiences, and I guess historically about in our culture, mothers being the primary caregiver, the person that would go to school, the person that would sign the child up for nursery, the person that would be there at the GP with the sick baby or the sick child. So we are, as a society, we're coming from a really poor starting point with trying to engage dads and male carers and shift the culture around what we all do. So we're not just talking about ourselves within the local authority, but right across all agencies and engaging with dads. And I'll say dads loosely, but I do male carers, because we have a lot of blended families. We have step parents, we have uncles that support with childcare, we have grandparents that are doing a lot of the childcare because parents are at home, so there's granddads there. So how can we make a place and engage our male carers with everything that we do with children, right from pregnancy all the way through, so that they feel comfortable that they think actually they can ask the questions, they can get involved, it is their role to do this. So I think that was a lot of the conversation, and we talked a lot about, you know, we do have young parents who are dads, we do have older parents who are dads. You know, there's not one picture of what that male carer looks like. So we needed to come from you know, a whole gambit of ways to be able to provide the right support at the right time. And we talked about what we currently deliver within family hubs. So we encourage male carers to come along with female carers jointly, but we also have specific sessions that are purely just for those male carers. But what we do know is that some male carers want to go specifically to just a dad group, but others don't. They want to be more embedded in the general groups and what we do have to offer. But we did talk about engagement rate, you know, and the impact of COVID, I think, was discussed quite a bit. And we talked about what happened during COVID when, you know, mums who were pregnant and the partners were excluded from that. So they weren't allowed to come into delivery suites, they weren't allowed to come for health and safety reasons into hospitals, you know. So we now, obviously, on top of the issues that we had in the culture originally, we now have that exasperated because we've got now a cohort of parents who are not used to being engaged with and seen as being as important as the mum potentially, because they weren't asked, they weren't there, they weren't allowed to be involved. So it's how do we re-engage those male carers back into the support, and as professionals, you know, making the male carers feel as valuable as mums are within the you know, within that childcare environment. So I think that captured, I think, a lot of the conversation that we did have. So we're doing a lot already, and you can see that in our data that I've already mentioned, in the uptake of engagement and buy-in, I guess, from our male carers, our dads. But it's what else can we be doing? And obviously some of the recommendations with continuing on in our work with our partners, so that they understand, you know, how they may be lacking in supporting, you know, dads, but also identifying places, as you've already said, around where we can target specifically. So maybe that's, you know, gyms, that's sports facilities, factories where, you know, there may be predominantly men, for example, who are working there, and getting some literature and some information out, you know, into the room that people are having their lunch or their reception area, so that they can look and see that there is an offer for them and that they are as supported, or should be as supported, as mums.
Thank you. Within it, we got a number of home testimonies, shall we say, from experiences from parents who had started their parenting, shall we say, maybe 20 to 30 years ago, when society was quite different. As you've touched on there, you know, trying to bring those fathers into the fold in an environment that is just completely different. We don't have that nuclear 2.4 children anymore. We have a variety of different things going on. What was so interesting was to see what the other experiences of fathers were. Both Les and Mark were very influential in that conversation to be able to talk about that. And also my own experience of having to have a child through COVID and not have father be able to be there through anything, and the after effects of that. Very interesting indeed, but I do feel like going forward that we have an awful lot to work on. We've made really good progress already, and the tools that we have, we're doing really well with. Anything that we do, we must do with budget in mind, because there isn't an endless pot of money. We only have a specific amount of money to do what we want to do, and therefore we must do it really, really well. Not just because we want to, but because we have no option but to do that. And I think the Dad Pad and the programme that we have here does exactly that. It really is fantastic. And the input from the other councillors as well was very good. That smaller knit group really worked, that we can explore things in a much better way. We had a conversation as opposed to a you talk, then they talk. It was a full conversation, and that seemed to really work for us. I wonder now if either Les or Mark would like to come in on something. Les?
One of the greatest pleasures in life is being a dad. And once a dad, always a dad. And it is one of the greatest responsibilities that a man can have. And not just caring for the child, but caring for the mother as well. And I think this has been lost in our culture. But after the discussions that we had, we re-engaged that thinking. And by the way, you don't just give up your role as a dad, you move on to being a granddad as well. And that role is completely different. You can spoil your grandchildren, but you can't spoil your own children. But the thing is, it is about moving in the right direction. And I think the conversations that we had were on that basis. I know that in my past, I was brought up partly by my grandparents, so I've taken on their values. And I know that the children brought up by their dads and their grandparents will be taking up their values as well. And I trust that their values are wonderful and expressive, so that those children brought up by their dads and their grandparents will be amazing children in the future. And that's the message that should come out from all this, that dads are important, granddads are important, and they are important in shaping a child's life into adulthood, and doesn't stop at 21, it continues on to the rest of their lives as well. But a dad's life does encompass grief as well. When a child dies, no matter what age, whether they're in their teens or earlier, or even in their 40s, 50s, that grief is borne by the dad and the granddad as well. So it's about life, isn't it? It is about the responsibilities of life, and it's about, those responsibilities do not cease. And I think the conversations that we had about this is absolutely amazing. To have that into our culture, into our society, and the responsibilities of family life is not just going to work and earning the money and bringing it home, but it is a lot more than that. It's about a culture at home, and it's about encouragement, and it's about instilling into our families a culture of peace and a way forward and a way of thinking and encouragement. So one of the greatest responsibilities of life is a child. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Les. Mr. Hodgson, you wanted to come in?
Anyway, if you look at your uptake and the involvement of the dads in that, it's that measured that's right across the whole of Northumberland on all the family hubs. What I was going to say is, were any particularly successful, in other words, introduced their own initiatives? I presume that there's county-wide initiatives and strategies, but were any of the family hubs particularly more successful in getting dads involved through their own initiatives, and therefore is there an opportunity to share that best practice across there? Or was it fairly uniform in terms of the involvement across the county?
So we try to have one model that fits all of our family hubs, so that we have equality of access and everybody, all families can have, access to everything. I think it was quite widespread in terms of access, but the individual, changes is about what individual dads and male carers want. So we are trying to give them what they're asking for, so listening to them. Obviously we do have male carers as part of our parent carer panel, so we are hearing from them directly. So what we have is a mixture of resources. So we have the digital resources that we're talking about in terms of what parents can access online, especially with the dad pad. We're trying to promote our general services and our support for dads to come to anyway, so that they can access it. So we're not just targeting mums and females within that. We've also put on groups that just dads can come to. So if they feel that they don't want to be sitting with other mothers, for example, because it might end up being, you know, nattering corner or whatever they might feel, or just lack of confidence in that environment, they can come and be supported by other dads and male carers. And we've also introduced other services and agencies to be able to use our hubs free of charge to support dads, such as, for example, Andy's Man Club. We have sessions going on in our hubs that's above and beyond what our staff can deliver. But it's not just about the sessions, but it's about the culture and the ethos of the staff. So right from day one, if we have staff going into family homes, or we are even just introducing a parents to the family hubs, it's about the way our staff engage dads and male carers right from the start. So we're not just directing the conversation to mums and asking them, you know, mum, how much does the baby feed? What does the baby weigh? It's about engaging that dad right from the outset.
All right, so it's not just about actually turning up at events in the family hub. It's being more proactive within the family. It's
absolutely everything. So the data that we did talk about, the 608.8% increase, I think it is, in uptake, that's specifically about the footfall, about them coming in to access. So that's about that. Yeah. But actually engaging dads and male carers is bigger than that, isn't it?
Yes.
It's bigger because we will have the majority of our carers who potentially aren't accessing, but we need to feel that, or make them feel that they're supported, to be able to show that the support and the services is there. As Councillor Bowman said, right across. It's not just about, you know, pregnancy or the first 1,001 days, but if there's an issue when your child is a teenager or whatever that may look like, that they know that there is somewhere that they can come to get that support. So it's about the ethos. It's about, you know, and I'll just touch briefly on the family help element of what we do. It's about when our staff, our workers, our family help workers go into family homes, that they are respectful and they are engaging dads within the homes as well. So, you know, making a point of, you know, which sometimes happens, mums are there for our appointment and do a lot of the talking, but it's saying, oh, can we get the dad in? Can we engage the dad? What's your view on this? Can we get your consent to do this? How can we support you? So it's not just based around the mum. So it's the whole culture of how we work with families, not just about the specific groups or sessions that we have on.
And I expect that side is more difficult to measure, isn't it?
It is, it is. And we do that because obviously, I think Sue spoke about our quality assurance framework, and we obviously look and we do case audit, so we're looking at recording, we're looking at where is the evidence, how are we engaging dads, what's that look like? So
you want really that qualitative data, which would help in your sort of task and finish group, wouldn't it, really?
We do. And we go out as a management team, we go out and we do practice days, so we shadow our staff doing those home visits, and part of that will be how are they engaging with dads.
Mark, did you want to come in very quickly? Yeah.
Please, Chair, so just mentioning a few things there. You mentioned about when we shared experiences in the task and finish group, and this goes back, I'm going to say a year or two, maybe it's a bit more. So when I was taking one of my youngsters in, and I explained this in the task and finish group, this is the old attitudes, and I would show up with my youngster, my baby at the time, and the old attitudes were, you know, getting funny looks off the other parents, but also off the staff as well, because I was the odd one out. So it is that change of attitudes and approaches, and I'm really pleased what you've just mentioned there, Marie, about that engagement with fathers, because predominantly it was always, you know, asking the mother, going into the home, asking the mother, how's the baby doing, what's the weight, what's happening, etc., etc. And that's the whole ethos of change that needs to happen. It's involving the father and everything, so that it's not just, oh, well, ask me wife, ask me partner, etc. Everything needs to change, and I hope that people are realising that it's not a one-parent thing in those households that have, you know, the two parents. But what I want to ask is that we go further. I mean, the increase at 600+% is brilliant, but we can do more. I would like to be able to walk through Manor Walks and see a poster that says, are you a new dad? And maybe it's a QR code, you know, help's available, and they can scan it and it'll take them to what's available. Possibly can we link up with some of these new dads who've been through that service and maybe do a little video, you know, to capture the benefits that they've, you know, real life, the benefits that they've found that, you know, hopefully you can say, God, I didn't realise that was there. And I've had this help and that help has been great. Capture those videos, get it out on you know, the council's website to say, look, this service is there, you can get it too, and just promote it that bit more so that that 600% can go up, and we can really get it out there as to the, you know, how really, you know, the amazing service is out there, and so spread it out more.
To draw this in, you brought us to the 2 recommendations. So we don't need to go into the granular detail of this now, but what I would like to see is what the action plan looks like around those 2 things. So there are 2 core recommendations. One is to enhance awareness through a robust communications plan, which Mark's kind of touching on how that would be, but also to advocate for family hubs and to increase community engagement, especially with male carers and fathers. I think they're possibly interlinked, but I would like to see what an action plan looks like from that, because we've almost now got a baseline of where we are, and I would hope that in a year's time, as a result of this, we'll see huge, massive impact in terms of how this is translating in terms of particularly with male carers. So again, that's something which obviously, if that could be done, that action plan, that would be fantastic. And just again, a huge thank you to everybody for that piece of work. So, moving on, we now have the, Rebecca's going to take us through the reports of the Scrutiny Officer, forward plan and overview on Scrutiny work programme. And then I've got something I want to say about that.
Yeah, I have no updates, so they're both just to note at the moment.
Great.
Yeah.
So, what I'd like to propose, if I can, to members is we have another opportunity for a task and finish group. And following on from the corporate parenting meeting yesterday, I think there is something that we can do, and particularly that report, which Councillor Chignally, thank you for, with male fathers, you can see that there's evidence pulled together, you pull together an action plan, yet something happens. But I think there's something about how we raise the profile of cared for children, and particularly how it cuts across departments within the council, but wider afield. So I think there's an opportunity for us to look at the roles, responsibility, the visibility. I just want to gauge whether members feel that that would be a good piece of work, because cared for children are a really vital piece of the work that we do as an authority. And I think pulling something together with this task and finish group, looking at the profile, how we increase profile, how we can do more, how we can get more people aware, how we can get more people aware of their responsibilities, and obviously that's then going to lead to an outcome in terms of better outcomes for young people. I just want to gauge whether people would be interested in supporting that as a task and finish. Mark and Eve.
Chair, I would fully support that. I think you're aware as well of some issues that have been going around where I think there's a lot of misinformation in the public domain about children in care, and I'm not sure how to put this, but there are certain people within certain residents who have this perception that children in care, there is a big negative, you know, to them, that they're in care for the wrong reasons, you know, naughty children, etc., etc., which is completely incorrect. You know, it's not their fault, and we try to do the best for them, and we need to change that perception. So I would fully support a report on that. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I would mirror everything that Mark has said there, but I would also say that it's quite a nice segue from what we've previously discussed in the task and finish group. One of the things that foster carers that I know often do is they take in older children, teenage children, who themselves have had babies quite recently and are needing that complete wraparound care. That's a real big task for any foster carer or foster family to take on board. And if we can segue that in and produce another report that covers both those, moving slightly further down, but encapsulating all of what we do here within this committee, I think that is a really good use of our task and finish group.
So I would take it from that there's support for us to add that to a work programme, which brings me on to I've not got any other urgent business, but I do want to say this. This is the last scrutiny meeting of this administration, because we're moving into an election cycle, and there'll be, I'm sure all of us will be returned with, but you never know. But there will be a new Family and Children's Services Scrutiny Committee, same officers, hopefully, but perhaps a different composition. And I do want to hold whoever is chairing, whoever it is, we do not know, the next Scrutiny Committee, hold them to do this, because it's a really important piece of work. And I think it'll probably carry, and I'm sure it will, less cross-party support for this to happen. So on that point, we'll tighten up the brief. I'll work with Rebecca on that. We'll make sure that's added to the work programme for the next cycle from May. And just on that point, I would just like to thank everyone for their work over the last 4 years on this scrutiny committee. It is, I think, one of the most productive, positive scrutiny committees we have within the local authority. It has touch points across everywhere in our community. It's probably the most important, I would say that, wouldn't I? But working with our young people is really important. And just a final shout out to our scrutiny team, to Leslie, who looks after doing all the hard work with the letters and writing everything out for us, and also to our staff as well within Children's Services, and our lovely IT team as well, who, if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be able to watch this on YouTube, which I'm sure you'll all be avidly doing later on. So thank you all very much, and good luck to everyone over the next few months, and we'll see you back at the next meeting, which will be in May sometime, is it? We'll sort that out, but there's a full council in March anyway, so we'll see you at the end of March at full council. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.